Hello and welcome to English Spark Official. I'm Zayden, joined as always by Alara.
Hey everyone! We're so excited about today's topic.
Right now, literally as you were listening to this very sentence, there are billions of hours of human knowledge trapped inside video and audio files across the internet.
Just completely invisible.
Utterly invisible. Think about the gravity of that. Like if someone filmed the exact step-by-step cure to a rare software bug, or maybe the perfect explanation of a really complex mathematical theorem.
But they buried it.
Right. They buried it at hour 3 of a massive, unsearchable video file. For the first 3 decades of the digital age, that information effectively, it just didn't exist. Search engines couldn't see it at all. We basically built an entire civilization's library out of opaque boxes.
Yeah, and it is a profound structural flaw in how we built the information age. You can read the label on the outside of the box, right? The video title, maybe a few tags.
The thumbnail.
Exactly, the thumbnail. But to know what is actually inside, you're forced to open it and just sit there in real time as the contents are, slowly, sequentially revealed. You are completely trapped by the creator's pacing.
Which leads to a very specific very modern kind of agony. I know you, the listener, have been there.
Yeah.
We all have. You are staring down the barrel of a 2-hour tutorial.
Oh, the worst.
You don't want to watch the whole thing. You don't have the time. You just need to know how to reset the specific cache on your specific device. So what do? You grab that little red dot on the timeline and you start the scrub of desperation.
It's a scrub of desperation.
You overshoot. Then you undershoot. You're hovering over those tiny, blurry thumbnail previews, just trying to decode visual clues. Yeah. And the minutes are ticking by, your blood pressure is rising. It is just the absolute peak of information friction.
It really is, because it's cognitive torture. It forces your brain to act as the processing engine for raw, unfiltered data streams. And the transition we're looking at today fundamentally rewrites that relationship.
Which is why we're doing this deep dive.
Exactly. The stack of source materials we're unpacking today focuses heavily on Google key moments and the use of video chapters to find answers fast.
Okay, let's unpack this, because on the surface, that just sounds like a simple user interface update, like a neat little search engine trick.
Just a new button to click.
Right, just a convenience feature. But the materials point to something much, much deeper. We weren't just looking at how to skip a boring intro. We are exploring a highly specific methodology that merges cutting-edge information retrieval with the actual architecture of human learning.
It's fascinating.
It really is. The sources explicitly detail how this mechanism is being weaponized, in the best sense of the word, obviously to crack the code for language learners who are trying to navigate English-speaking environments.
And that is the core premise we need to establish right up front. This goes far, far beyond search algorithms. This is really about how the human brain isolates variables.
Yeah.
It's about how we reduce the overwhelming friction of a complex environment. And that could be an immersive new language, or a dense corporate presentation, or even a convoluted technical manual. We reduce that friction and slice it down into functional, digestible pieces.
And whether you are, actively trying to master a new language, or you're simply trying to survive the sheer volume of data in your daily professional life, mastering these key moments is an absolute modern survival skill.
I completely agree.
So before we get into the neuroscience of language acquisition or the mechanics of memory, we have to look under the hood. What is the anatomy of a key moment? And how does it actually change the physics of digital content?
Well, to understand the anatomy, we really have to look at the historical context of search indexing. The early internet was purely text-based.
Right, mostly just walls of text.
Yeah, and text is naturally highly structured. A search engine spider can crawl a document, read the headings, index the vocabulary, and instantly map the relevance of page 4 versus, page 40.
It's very clean.
Exactly. But when video arrived, it broke that paradigm entirely. Video was a black box. The search engine didn't know if the segment on, say, fixing a leaky faucet was at minute 2 or minute 45.
The search engine was basically saying, look, I know there is a plumber in this video somewhere, but I have absolutely no clue what he's doing.
Exactly the problem. So what key moments in video chaptering do is they act as the nervous system of a video file.
We like that.
They turn a dead block of pixels and sound waves into a highly indexed, searchable database. And it relies on metadata.
Data about data.
Right. Through a combination of creator input, optical character recognition, scanning the visual slides, and natural language processing, transcribing the audio, the timeline is actually segmented. It is no longer a linear stream. It's a map with coordinates.
I want to pause on that transition because it completely changes our posture as consumers, doesn't it?
Right.
We no longer just sit back in a passive state and watch a video. We query it. We interrogate the file.
You do.
It's like having a physical map where the buried treasure is already glowing. You don't have to walk the entire island. You just parachute directly onto the X. We are telling the system, hey, I'm rejecting the background history. I'm bypassing the introduction. Just drop me directly onto the coordinate where the solution occurs.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the reason this targeted retrieval feels so relieving to us on a biological level is rooted in cognitive load theory.
Tell us more about that.
So our working memory, the part of our brain actively holding and manipulating new information, is incredibly limited. When you sit through a 2-hour video looking for one single fact, your brain isn't resting.
It feels like work because it is work.
Exactly. It is actively working to process, evaluate, filter, and discard massive amounts of completely irrelevant auditory and visual stimuli.
It's exhausting. It's like being forced to read an entire encyclopedia just to find the definition of one word. But the encyclopedia is being read aloud to you in a really noisy room.
That is a highly accurate representation of this neurological strain, actually. Chaptering pre-chunks the information for you. It does the heavy lifting of categorization before the data even enters your visual cortex. The cognitive friction is just removed.
So let's talk about how you, the listener, can actually weaponize this right now. If we are looking at pro tips for efficient information searching based on this architecture, I think the first behavioral change is killing the instinct to hit play.
Absolutely. Hitting play from the 0-second mark is a legacy habit from the era of television.
Right. It's a dead habit. When you query a problem, your eye should immediately bypass the play button and scan for the chapter markers in the timeline. You expand the description, you look for the key moments breakdown, you use those timestamps as your primary filtering mechanism.
You have to be proactive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If a video is 20 minutes long and there are no chapters, no metadata, no key moments, I mean, in many professional contexts, you should just close the tab and find a source that respects the structure of the information.
Because unstructured information is a massive liability. When you think about everyday office tasks, the implementation of this indexing is revolutionary. Consider the asynchronous work environment.
Oh, let's dive into that. That's a huge pain point for everyone right now.
Right. So a massive project update meeting happens. It's an hour long. You were double booked, so you missed it. The recording is generated in Teams or Zoom. Now, the old method of catching up was pure friction.
Oh, yeah. You either play it on 1.5x speed and endure a massive headache, or you scroll through a giant block of unformatted transcript text just hoping a keyword catches your eye.
Both of those methods guarantee a high rate of information loss. The cognitive load is spent on the search, not the synthesis of the information.
Which is backward.
Exactly. But with auto-generated chapters and smart timeline indexing, the meeting is literally transformed into a database. You look at the key moments, you see the chapter labeled Q3 budget constraints or client feedback on the beta prototype.
You jump straight to minute 32. You extract the data you need for your department, and you are out in 4 minutes. You have reclaimed 56 minutes of cognitive bandwidth.
And that precise mechanism, the ability to isolate a variable, strip away the surrounding noise, and focus entirely on the specific signal you need, that is the bridge to the primary application in our source material.
Right, the language learning aspect.
Yes. The text explicitly focuses on how this targeted extraction is the ultimate tool for individuals at the A2 to B2 level navigating English-speaking environments.
So let's establish the parameters here. Why this specific group? For those who might be unfamiliar with the common European framework of reference for languages, the A2 to B2 range is what linguists and educators refer to as the intermediate plateau. And it is notorious.
It is the graveyard of language learning.
Wow, the graveyard.
It really is. At the A1 level, the absolute beginner phase, the brain is highly stimulated by rapid progress. You learn to say apple, water, and where is the train?
The basic.
The dopamine hit is immediate because the delta between knowing nothing and knowing something is massive. You are in a highly controlled, sterilized environment, a textbook. or a slow-paced audio file designed for toddlers.
But then you push into A2, B1, and eventually B2. You aren't a beginner anymore. You understand grammatical tenses. You have a vocabulary of a few thousand words. You can confidently read a news article or order off a menu in your head.
In your head, yes, that's the key distinction.
Right. So you step out into the real world. You walk into a loud, unscripted English-speaking environment, maybe a busy pub in London or a chaotic office in New York, and your brain simply crashes.
The transition from the sterilized classroom to the acoustic chaos of reality is brutal. Because in the real world, native speakers do not speak in the discrete, separated words of a textbook.
They really don't.
No, they use connected speech. Words bleed into each other. What are you going to do becomes the phonetic blur of whatchaganado. Add to that the background noise, the slang, the cultural idioms, and the sheer velocity of native speech.
The cognitive load spikes so violently that the learner's working memory just overflows. They're trying to separate the acoustic blur into individual words, translate those words, process the grammar, read the speaker's body language, and, formulate a reply all simultaneously.
It's impossible. The result is a complete shutdown of auditory processing. The learner hears nothing but noise. And this is where key moments offer a really profound pedagogical intervention.
Because the instinct when you hit that brick wall is to either give up entirely or to try and brute force your way through massive amounts of immersion. People think, I just need to watch English movies for 3 hours a day and it'll soak in.
Which is a myth.
Right. But if it's just a wall of noise, watching 3 hours of it doesn't teach you anything. It just reinforces your frustration.
Immersion without comprehension is just drowning. Key moments change the architecture of the immersion. So instead of confronting a 2-hour unscripted vlog about someone's day in London, which is way too chaotic, the learner uses the metadata to find the exact hyper-specific interaction they need.
They find the chapter titled Ordering an Iced Coffee. It is a 2-minute slice of reality. They have effectively placed a soundproof box around a specific social interaction. They've isolated the variable.
And then they can loop those 2 minutes. They can listen to the specific intonation the barista uses. They can isolate the connected speech. It creates a micro-environment for deep study. They aren't trying to understand the whole world. They are just mastering the physics of ordering a coffee.
Okay, I see where you're going with this, but I have to challenge the premise here. If we are constantly relying on these hyper-curated, isolated 2-minute clips, aren't we artificially sterilizing the language again?
That's a fair point.
I mean, real life doesn't happen in chapters.
Yeah.
If you only ever study the ordering coffee key moment, the second the barista deviates from the script and asks you about the weather, you're going to freeze anyway. Aren't we robbing the learner of the broader context?
That is a critical vulnerability, but only if the key moment is treated as the end of the journey rather than the beginning.
Okay.
The goal is not to memorize a 2-minute script and call it fluency. The goal is anchoring.
Anchoring. Can you clarify how that works in this context?
Sure. When a B1 learner is drowning in that sea of acoustic noise, they have nothing to hold on to. By using a key moment to achieve total profound comprehension of a micro-interaction, they build a solid cognitive anchor.
I'm following.
Once they deeply understand the rhythm, the vocabulary, and the speed of that specific exchange, their brain relaxes. The cognitive load drops significantly. Because they are no longer panicking about the core transaction of getting the coffee, they suddenly have leftover cognitive bandwidth to process the unexpected comment about the weather.
I get it. So you build the capacity for context by mastering the core variable first. If you try to absorb the core transaction and the spontaneous small talk at the exact same time, the system crashes.
Precisely. You expand outward from the anchor. But, and this is crucial, finding the isolated chapter is only the first step. Recognizing the words passively does not equate to the ability to produce them in real time.
No, it definitely doesn't.
Moving from passive comprehension to active mastery requires an entirely different set of neurological mechanics, which the source material mandates we explore.
And the text is incredibly rigid here. Right. It doesn't suggest, it demands. It outlines mandatory listening and learning features. Specifically, shadowing practice, repetition of key phrases, and explicit listening focus cues. We really need to talk about the physical reality of language because we often treat learning a language like, downloading software.
Right.
but it's much closer to training for a marathon.
It is fundamentally a motor skill. When we look at shadowing, which is a technique originally pioneered for training simultaneous interpreters at the UN, actually we are looking at the intersection of the auditory cortex and the motor cortex.
Let's dissect what shadowing actually is, because the phrase sounds mystical, but the execution is highly mechanical. The source provides the prompt, repeat after me.
Right. The core premise is auditory mirroring. You listen to a model of native speech, and you attempt to replicate that speech almost simultaneously or immediately after, matching the rhythm, the stress, and the intonation as closely as physically possible.
And I use the word physically intentionally there. When you speak your native language, you do not think about the position of your tongue, the tension in your jaw, or the shape of your lips. Those neural pathways were paved when you were a toddler.
Deeply ingrained.
Yeah. But when a non-native speaker tries to produce English phonemes, the actual units of sound, they are often encountering acoustic shapes that simply do not exist in their native muscular repertoire.
Consider the English TH sound. For many learners, their native language has never required them to place their tongue slightly between their teeth and force air out to create friction.
It's a very weird movement if you aren't used to it.
Exactly. When they try to say the, their brain knows the word, but their mouth literally lacks the muscular habit. They might substitute a D or a Z sound because that is the closest pathway available to them.
It's exactly like learning to play the guitar. You can read the sheet music. You can know intellectually where your fingers are supposed to go. But until you press those strings down 1,000 times, building the calluses and the muscle memory, your hand will freeze when it's time to play the chord. Shadowing is building the calluses.
That's a great analogy. It bridges the gap between Wernicke's area, which handles language comprehension, and Broca's area, which manages speech production. When you shadow, you create a real-time feedback loop. You hear the native sound, you attempt the physical articulation, you hear your own output, and your brain instantly calculates the delta between the two.
The brain recognizes, oh wait, I didn't vibrate my vocal cords enough there, or my tongue was too far back on the alveolar ridge.
And it corrects in real time. But to engage this deeply demanding neurological process, the brain needs to be primed. It cannot be in passive listening mode. This is why the source demands focus cues.
Cues like, listen carefully.
Yes. That phrase is a mental starting pistol. It shifts the brain's attentional spotlight. It stops the passive scrolling and signals the motor cortex to prepare for action.
So we need to bring this out of the abstract. We're going to do this. I am going to step into the role of the learner, and I want you, the listener, to engage with this right along with us.
Absolutely.
It doesn't matter if you are a native speaker or a B2 learner. The mechanics of shadowing apply to mastering complex jargon, practicing a speech, or refining an accent. If you are doing the dishes right now or walking the dog, this might feel a little strange. But vocalization is the only way to build the pathway. Let's use some of the core vocabulary of our deep dive.
Okay, I will provide the model. I will give the focus cue to prime the attention and the prompt to engage the motor cortex. You, the listener, and the host will follow. Pay close attention to the rhythm and the stress on the syllables.
I'm ready.
Listen carefully. Information retrieval. Repeat after me. Information retrieval.
Information retrieval.
Let's do that again, but focus on the crispness of the T and the R in retrieval. Listen carefully. Information retrieval. Repeat after me. Information retrieval.
Information retrieval.
Notice how the physical act forces you to process the word differently than just reading it on a screen.
Oh, absolutely. You really feel the bounce in the rhythm.
Yeah.
Information. Let's try another one.
That's
This is a
strong.
core term from the source.
Listen carefully. Key moments. Repeat after me. Key moments.
The moment.
Let's isolate the plural S at the end, which often gets swallowed by learners. Make sure it really rings out. Listen carefully. Key moments. Repeat after me. Key moments.
Key moments.
Great. And this isn't just an exercise for ESL classrooms. If you are a professional stepping into a high-stakes board meeting and you need to introduce a new, complex, strategic initiative, shadowing your own talking points out loud is mandatory.
Yes, you cannot rely on a cognitive draft. If you've only ever thought the words in your head, the first time you try to physically push them out of your mouth under the pressure of the boardroom, you will stumble. Your mouth needs to know the pathway.
But this introduces a new layer of complexity. Shadowing is highly effective for mimicking the rhythm of known words. But what happens when the learner encounters a word within a key moment that they simply do not comprehend? Or a word whose phonetic architecture is so alien that their mouth simply cannot mimic it on the first try?
Right, because if I just hit a brick wall of technical jargon, shadowing just turns into frustrated mumbling. And the source anticipates this. It lays down a very strict pedagogical rule for navigating this difficulty escalation. It states, start with simple vocabulary, then gradually increase difficulty. And the non-negotiable rule, any difficult word must be explained naturally.
What the source is outlining here is the concept of scaffolding.
Let's unpack scaffolding. Because we throw that term around in education a lot, but the mechanics of it are deeply tied to cognitive load theory again. Think of literal scaffolding on a skyscraper. You do not ask a construction worker to jump 30 feet into the air to weld the next steel beam.
No, that would be absurd.
That is the equivalent of throwing a B1 learner into an unedited corporate legal deposition.
The worker will fall, and the learner will abandon the task.
Exactly. You build a temporary structure, the scaffold, that allows them to reach the next level safely. Once they are secure on that level, you build the next tier. In language acquisition, the scaffold is the simple vocabulary they already possess.
Right. So the video chapter aims to teach a B2 learner how to set up enterprise software, and the presenter begins with, initialize the chronologically sequenced metadata algorithms to bypass the heuristic protocols. You haven't just lost the learner.
They're gone.
The cognitive load has spiked so violently that the brain triggers a stress response. Comprehension drops to absolute zero.
So how does the source demand we fix this? We explain it naturally. We start with the foundation. The presenter should say, first, we need to organize our files by time. We need to put them in the exact order that they happened. That is the simple vocabulary scaffold.
Then you elevate the language. Organizing things in the order they happened in time is what we call putting them in a chronological order.
You have introduced the complex jargon, but you have surrounded it with a conversational definition. You aren't pausing the flow to read a dry dictionary entry, which, breaks the immersion. You are weaving the definition into the narrative.
But cognitive understanding is only half the battle. We must return to the motor cortex. When you encounter a high-value technical term like chronological, it looks terrifying on a page. The combination of letters, signals, and acoustic obstacle course. To help the learner, we have to become linguistic mechanics. We have to disassemble the word phonetically.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because we aren't just going to tell you to say it slowly. We are going to analyze why these words create friction for the human mouth and how to hack the pronunciation. Let's take the word algorithm. It is the invisible hand of the internet. It governs key moments. It governs what we see.
For a non-native speaker, algorithm is a nightmare. Let's look at the mechanics. You have an L and a G sound clustered together. Then you have a soft voiced TH sound immediately followed by an M. The tongue has to bounce from the roof of the mouth down to the throat for the G, push through the teeth for the TH, and then the lips must slam shut for the M. It is linguistic gymnastics.
So we use scaffolding for the pronunciation. We break it into phonetic syllables.
We define it simply first. An algorithm is just a recipe. It's a strict set of instructions a computer follows to solve a problem. Now, for the physical breakdown, listen to the isolation. Algo, rith, M.
The trickiest part is the TH transition. Your tongue must be between your teeth for the rith, and you have to vibrate your vocal cords. It's not a soft, breathy TH like in thought. It's heavy, rith. Then the M, rhythm. Let's engage the shadowing.
Listen carefully. Algorithm. Repeat after me. Algorithm.
Algorithm.
Let's tackle chronological. We define the concept, arranging by time. The friction here is the opening consonant cluster, the CH followed by an R.
Right, because CH usually makes a chew sound, like in cheese. But here, it's a hard K sound. It's a total trap for learners.
The tongue pulls back. It's a K sound immediately sliding into an R. Krah. Krah. No, logical. 6 syllables. It is a marathon of breath control.
Listen to the stress. The heavy beat falls on la. Chronological.
Listen carefully. Chronological. Repeat after me. Chronological.
Chronological.
And finally, the term that underpins this entire architecture, metadata. Data about data. The tags that tell the search engine what is inside the video box. The friction here isn't the consonant clusters, it's the speed and the regional accent variations, specifically the American flap T.
Yes. If a learner reads metadata on a page, they will pronounce every T crisply. Metadata. But when they listen to the key moment of an American tech presentation, they won't hear that. They will hear what sounds like soft Ds.
The tongue simply flaps against the alveolar ridge behind the top teeth rather than stopping the air completely. It sounds like may-de-day-do. If the learner doesn't understand this phonetic shift, they won't recognize the word in the while.
We have to shadow the reality of the speech, not the theory of the spelling.
Listen carefully. Metadata. Repeat after me. Metadata.
Metadata.
By breaking these words down phonetically and explaining the physical mechanics of the mouth, we remove the intimidation. We move them from complex academic jargon to functional, actionable vocabulary.
Which brings us to the ultimate mandate of our source material. The text strictly requires us to focus on examples from daily life and real conversations and relatable situations and practical usage. Because if we just sit here theorizing about linguistics and search indexing, well, we have failed.
Entirely.
If you understand how a key moment works, and you understand how to shadow a word, but you still spend 2 hours scrubbing through a timeline when your dishwasher breaks, then this knowledge is useless.
Theory without application is just entertainment. We have to operationalize this. We have to look at how a user, whether a language learner or an office worker, actively structures their daily challenges as searchable chapters.
So what does this all mean for your actual Tuesday morning? Let's paint a hyper-relatable, high-anxiety situation. Let's say you are that B2 English learner. Or, frankly, let's say you are a native speaker who just hates confrontation. You have a fraudulent, unauthorized charge on your credit card. You have to call the bank.
A phone call is the highest tier of linguistic difficulty.
It really is.
There are 0 visual cues. You cannot read lips. You cannot see body language. The audio quality is compressed. And the banking representative is going to use highly specific, heavily scripted jargon at a rapid pace.
For a non-native speaker, the cognitive load will overwhelm them the moment the automated voice asks for their alphanumeric verification code. They will freeze. But using the architecture we've built today, you do not approach that phone call unprepared. You construct a custom curriculum.
You open your search engine. You do not search for banking rules. You query the specific interaction. How to dispute a credit card charge phone call role play.
You will likely find a 20-minute video from a financial advisor giving a long preamble about credit scores. You completely ignore the preamble. You deploy your new filter. You scan the key moments metadata. You look for the chapter titled Role Play, Speaking to the Agent.
It is a 90-second clip. You have parachuted directly onto the critical interaction. Now, you apply the mechanics. You listen to the native speed exchange. You isolate the friction points. Words like dispute, unauthorized, fraudulent.
You build your own scaffolding. You look up the simple definitions. And then you engage the motor cortex. You loop those 90 seconds, and you shadow the customer's dialogue. You practice the rhythm of saying, I need to dispute an unauthorized charge.
Yeah.
You do it until the jaw muscles know the pathway.
You are building the physical reflex before the pressure of the actual performance. When you finally dial the bank, you aren't searching your working memory for the vocabulary. You are relying on built-in muscle memory.
And think about how seamlessly this methodology translates to the modern corporate environment. The applications for everyday office tasks are massive.
It is the difference between working harder and working structurally.
Let's look at meeting preparation. You are a department lead. You have a massive cross-functional alignment meeting tomorrow.
Yeah.
Historically, preparing for that meant digging through endless email chains or rewatching entire recordings of previous meetings just to find the 2 minutes where your specific project was mentioned.
Which is a catastrophic waste of cognitive resources.
Exactly. But now, utilizing enterprise tools that automatically generate transcripts and key moment chapters, you query the database. You search the meeting index for your project's codename.
The AI has already chunked the hour-long meeting into searchable metadata. It points you to a 3-minute chapter at the 41-minute mark.
You jump in. You listen to the exact phrasing the marketing director used when expressing concerns about your timeline. You extract the data.
Yeah.
You shadow your response to ensure your tone is right. You log the information and you exit the file.
You have turned a passive, hour-long commitment into a highly targeted 5-minute extraction. You have dictated the terms of engagement with the information.
This is the profound shift. You are transforming the internet and your company's internal servers from overwhelming broadcast mediums into on-demand, customized utility networks. You are filtering out the noise to preserve your mental energy for actual synthesis and execution.
It is the ultimate evolution of information retrieval. We are no longer drowning in the sea. We have learned how to navigate the currents.
And that beautifully brings us to the end of our exploration today. We started by looking at the pure structural agony of unindexed video, the billions of hours of trapped knowledge. We dissected how Google Key Moments act as the metadata nervous system, allowing us to query media rather than passively consume it. We took a deep dive into the A2 to B2 language plateau, understanding the crushing weight of cognitive load and how chapters create safe microenvironments for deep comprehension.
We also pulled back the curtain on the physical mechanics of learning. We explored why shadowing engages the motor cortex to build necessary muscle memory, and we analyzed the linguistic friction of technical jargon, using scaffolding to break down complex phonetics. Finally, we brought it into the real world, mapping out how to use this targeted extraction to conquer high-stress phone calls and drastically optimize daily office tasks.
But before we let you go, there's one final thought we need to leave you with. A bit of a provocation. We have spent this entire massive deep dive celebrating the absolute power of efficiency. We have praised the ability to kill the noise, to bypass the context, and to drop directly onto the single hyper-specific answer we demand.
Which raises a deeply important, almost philosophical question about the nature of learning itself. If the algorithms and the metadata continue to perfect this art of extraction, if the systems become so incredibly efficient that they only ever deliver the exact frictionless answers we seek, what happens to the value of the unkey moments?
It's a chilling thought. In our unrelenting rush to optimize our cognitive load, in our obsession with finding answers fast, are we slowly editing out the messy nuance of context? Are we losing the sheer, beautiful serendipity of the journey? Sometimes the most profound piece of knowledge you acquire isn't the answer to the specific query you typed into the search bar.
No, it's often the opposite.
It's the weird, unexpected fact you stumbled across while you were wandering through the noise. If we eliminate all the wandering, what else are we eliminating from the human experience? It is something to seriously mull over the next time you find yourself aggressively skipping ahead to the chapter marker. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the algorithms, keep shadowing those difficult words, stay intensely curious, and keep seeking out the key moments in your own life.